I'll call the City Council adjourned meeting for Monday, July the 16th, 2007 to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Roll call, Tracy, please.
Arbogast.
Here.
Garnis. Gisselbeck.
Here.
Heller.
Here.
Meisenheimer.
Here.
Solberg. Solem. Walder.
Here.
Wilkins. And York. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Agenda item number 1 is the approval of the minutes of the City Council meetings that was held on July the 2nd of 2007. Is there a motion? So moved by Alderman Solberg. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alderwoman York. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Agenda item number 2 is resolution number 07-37, authorizing the issuance of the Economic Development Revenue Bonds for Great Plains Lutheran High School project in the amount not to exceed $2.1 million. Tracy?
Thank you. You have a copy of the resolution in your agenda packet. The resolution essentially gives approval to the issuance of bonds for the benefit of Great Plains Lutheran. They assume all responsibility, legal and financial obligation to repay those bonds. And there's one sentence in here that I just want to read out of the resolution just so that there is no question. And that reads, "The bonds and the interest thereon shall not constitute an indebtedness of the city within the meaning of Article 13," and that's referring to an article of the state constitution, "or any statutory limitation, and shall not constitute or give rise to a pecuniary liability of the city or its officers, agents, or employees, or a charge against the city's general credit or taxing powers." So that's simply saying that this is not a debt of the city, even though in effect the city is issuing the bonds. The Great Plains Lutheran assumes all financial and legal responsibility for repayment.
Thank you, Tracy. I'll begin with a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to the issue? If not, then I'll close the public hearing and request council action. Is there a motion for the approval of resolution number 07-37?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Alderwoman York. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alderman Meisenheimer. Any additional questions? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 3 is consideration of the transfer of 2 alcoholic beverage licenses from the Guest House Motor Inn Dual Incorporated to Guest House Motor Inn Guest House Enterprises Incorporated, 101 North Broadway. What we have here is the sale of a business and the appropriate transfer of the business licenses and that. We'll begin with item 3A, which is the retail on-sale liquor license. We'll open it to a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to the issue? If not, then I'll close the public hearing and request council action for the approval of the retail on-sale liquor license. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
So moved by Alderwoman Arbogast, seconded by Alderman Garnos. Any additional questions? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 3B is the retail on-off-sale malt beverage license. And once again, we'll begin with the public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to the issue? If not, we'll close the public hearing and go to council action. Is there a motion for the approval of the retail on-off-sale license, malt beverage license transfer? So moved by Alderwoman Walder. Is there a second? Seconded by Alderman Garnos. Any questions? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 3C, which we'll do just in one motion, is consideration of the associated city licenses, one being Sunday liquor sales, and the next one is the liquor establishment license. The Guest House Motor Inn meets all the requirements for Sunday liquor sales, so if I may have a motion then for the approval of those two.
So moved.
So moved by Alderman Solberg. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Alderwoman York. Any questions or discussion?
There has been a question raised.
I saw that too. Tracy, would you want to elaborate on that?
That is actually a city-issued license pursuant to city ordinance, any establishment that serves alcohol, in addition to having their state-issued license, also has to have this city-issued license.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Any other questions or discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 4 is the tax incremental financing district number 4, which A is resolution number 07-38, creating the district. Item B, the plat approval resolution 7-39 has been withdrawn, so we'll just be dealing with the resolution number 07-38, creating the district. And Craig, would you be here to discuss that?
And if he,
Or Stanton?
while he's approaching the podium, Mayor, if I could maybe make some brief comments. As the council is aware, this afternoon at noon, a special meeting of the Plan Commission was held to discuss this very issue, the creation of tax incremental district number 4. Prior to the meeting, as state law requires, both the school district and county were given notice of that special hearing. And so we've complied with all the statutory requirements. But one thing that happened today during the Plan Commission meeting is that when the county and the school were given notice of the proposed district boundaries, there was a slight modification in the Plan Commission's recommendation as to the boundaries of tax increment district number 4, and that was discussed during today's public hearing. But I think Craig's going to put up on the overhead a description of where the boundaries are that the Plan Commission today recommended you folks approve as the boundary of tax increment district number 4.
Good evening, Craig Atkins, Focus Watertown. If you will just indulge me for a couple of minutes, the city staff had asked and we had prepared a brief presentation for the benefit of the new members as well as refresher for some of the old council members of just real generally how tax increment finance districts work, and then we will get right into the actual tax increment district that we're discussing today. If you hear me refer to tax increment district or tax finance district, they are basically the same thing. The tax increment district's the actual physical description of the property. The financing mechanism is often referred to as a tax increment financing district. So basically the same thing. I wanted to make sure that we didn't create any confusion if I jump back and forth between those. What are tax incremental districts? TIDs allow communities or developers to fund public improvements to a site for the purpose of an economic development project. And if you have any questions as we go through this, please feel free to just interrupt or ask me at the end, either way. The difference between the base value of the property tax and the increase in the property tax after the project is completed provides the increment. The increase in property tax revenue, the increment, is used to pay for the improvements, and those would be the public improvements as outlined by South Dakota law. Tax incremental districts provide the improvements must take place within 5 years of the creation of the district, with the exception of land which can be purchased up to 1 year prior to the creation of the district. The district can exist for up to 20 years. When the improvements are paid off, the tax dollars revert to the appropriate taxing entity. The role the Planning Commission plays, they adopt a resolution and establish the TID boundaries, schedule a public hearing on the proposed TID, which happened earlier today, develop a proposal for the location of the TID, present recommendations to the City Council, which through me, I guess, and the city staff we're doing right now. TID procedures, City or County Commission can do tax increment financing. The city will adopt a resolution, or we prefer would adopt a resolution establishing the TID. Request that the Department of Revenue determine the tax increment base. That's basically the value as of the date the resolution is approved. Direct the Planning Commission to develop the project plan. The Planning Commission then develops the project plan, which includes the proposed public improvements, project costs, financing strategies, economic feasibility, map showing existing uses and proposed improvements. And as I said, I'm going through this rather fast. I'd be happy to share this with any of you afterwards as well. The City or County Commission adopts the project plan. The property tax increment is utilized to retire the tax increment bond or other financing. And as a result of this, here's an example of the 3 tax increment districts that we've done to date: the Hanton Industrial Park, Mallard Point Business Park, and the Pheasant Ridge Industrial Park. We have funded things such as land acquisition, railroad construction, site utilities, gas, water, and sewer extension, site drainage, professional fees, just to give you an example of some of the many things that are eligible. This is a map of the Hanton Industrial Park. The area in black is the entire tax increment district number 1, the boundary for that that TID. In that particular case, we used a portion of the money to help build the rail spur. Mallard Point TID number 2 is a total infrastructure improvement of $1.24 million. In this particular case, not only did we utilize TIF funds, but we leveraged additional funds both from the state and the community, and actually a private contributor this time, Walmart, to complete the roads 13th Avenue, 15th Avenue, and 29th Street. There's just a quick map of the tax increment district number 2. The green and yellow and orange indicate road work and drainage work and storm sewer that was done as part of this project. This is the 13th Avenue improvement, the drainage channel that you'll see along 29th Street, and 15th Avenue. TID number 3 was Pheasant Ridge. Again, this is just a project map that identifies what improvements were done. In that particular case, we did infrastructure, roads, and drainage. Total infrastructure improvements for that project was $826,000. Again, we utilized TIF funds and leveraged those from different sources. $300,000 in tax increment financing for this particular project. South Dakota Industrial Park Access Grant Program for $276,000. The Watertown Development Company provided $100,000, and the City of Watertown contributed another $150,000 on top of that. This is the tax increment district number 3 boundary, just to give you an idea. That's 43rd Street that runs along the east end of the map. This was 43rd Street before the project. This was 43rd Street after the project. Not only did this project obviously benefit McFleeg, the tenant at the time that purchased the property from us, but it also opened up several new industrial park lots that are basically shovel ready at this point. We have been strategically trying to use tax increment finance districts to help us not only meet the needs of the tenants that move into the industrial properties, but also to complete as much of the infrastructure work as we can, so that as we get further down the road, we are not always having to respond in a crisis mode in terms of what new industrial park tenants want. This is just an example of what a tax increment district project cost would look like in the actual plan that would be approved. Just outline some of the different costs. We have capital costs, financing costs, professional fees and services, organizational costs, and so on. Just an example. What you might notice here is we talked about tax increment district number 3 and said that it was only a $300,000 tax increment finance district. But if you look at the actual budget number of the $5.52 million, that's based off of total development of that park. And as we indicated earlier, we have 5 years to do additional improvements. So we may come in and request a certain amount of money for a project, but the actual tax increment district might be, in terms of total dollars that we could generate there, might be much larger. And this is a map that the Planning Commission referred to today. We with city staff's input, we asked that this new map be the boundaries that we consider. We are currently looking at a tax increment finance district for Lot 4 for a prospect or project that we're working with on a new 80,000 square foot facility. And at this point, I guess that's really all I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions or anything else anybody else might have.
Are you saying then that this is not only designed for one Lot 4, but also so that there may be new buildings or put on Lot B and Lot C and Lot 1?
Lot B, Lot C, and Lot 1 have existing buildings on them, but we could do additional. For instance, one of the discussions we had was, would we need to resurface that road in the next 5 years? And by including those lots, we have the ability in that road, we have the ability to do that. We've done TIFs both very specific, site specific, which was what we did with the Mallard Point TIF for OEM. It included the roads and just the lot for OEM. We've also done TIFs that are much broader in scope, like Canton Industrial Park, where we included the entire park, which allowed us then the flexibility to, when Acritech approached us, allowed us the flexibility to provide some tax increment financing dollars for them to assist with that project.
I guess are there any other questions for Craig then? If not, then could I have a motion then for the approval of resolution number 07-38, creating the district?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Alderman Giselbeck, is there a second? Seconded by Alderman Garno. So is there any additional questions or discussion?
Just one comment that I will make. The resolution in your packet includes a legal description of the district as it was originally contemplated, so that the legal description will be amended in the final resolution to include all of the space in yellow on that map.
Thank you, Tracy. Any other questions in that? If not, then all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Craig. Agenda item number 5 is consideration of bids received for construction of the First Avenue North Extension Project. Dave Peterson.
Good evening. Bids were opened on July 6th for this project. 4 bids were received for the project, with the low bidder being McLaughlin and Schultz of Marshall, Minnesota and Watertown, and with the low bid of $3,368,973.53. This went to the Public Works and comes to you with the recommendation of the Public Works for award of the bid to F.J. McLaughlin. Now, this award would be contingent upon DOT approval and also DENR approval.
Thank you, Dave. Is there a motion then for the approval of McLaughlin Schultz?
So moved.
So moved by Alderman Meisenheimer. Is there a second? Seconded by Alderwoman Walder. Any further questions or discussion?
Yeah, I have a question for Dave. If these were individually bid, because there's a contractor doing each one, I figured out we'd save about $107,000 if we took the lowest bid on each one. And I understand it's a complete bid, but in the future, could we do a separation of bids? I know there's a problem with coordinating sometimes the whole project with several different contractors doing it, but essentially it's that way right now. And I realize we got a good bid here that was quite a bit below the engineer's estimate.
Sometimes you can save money on this, and sometimes the individual contractors will put price in their bid for just coordinating with the other contractors, because no matter what you do, they have to coordinate their work with each other. Plus, it also becomes a timing issue, you know, that each individual contractor doesn't really have a whole lot of say as far as when they can get in there. So you may save some money and you may not, so it's kind of a guess whether you will or not.
I guess one other question, I assume you guys will be out there quite a bit watching over the project, correct?
We will a certain amount, but Austin Engineering has been hired to do the contract engineering, doing the staking and inspection on this project.
Any other questions for Dave?
Just when do you expect construction to start?
I haven't heard from the contractor as far as when they're planning on starting. I suspect they probably will start as soon as they get all of the paperwork in order. There's quite a little to do. They have until July 31st of next year for final completion. But they have utilities to put in and a bridge to construct, and it's good if they get the utilities in before winter.
The first step would be a pre-construction meeting, and there we'd set some initial goals and direction, and probably at that point establish a start date.
Any other questions? If not, then all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Also under item number 5, we have a request to purchase some fill from Don Endries at Glacial Lakes Capital, not to exceed the amount of $27,136. Dave, would you want to elaborate on that, why we weren't able to get that in other than the council meeting?
Yes, at the last minute on this project, it was realized that there was some fill material that they thought was going to be used on the project. An old railroad berm that's just off the edge of this project that was fill that was right in the area, and there's enough fill there for completing all of the project. But it wasn't included in the contract documents for either the city to furnish this, or for the contractor to negotiate with the property owners to obtain this. So at the last minute, the city decided that it'd probably be in the best interest if we tried to purchase this fill material and have it available for the contractor, rather than having the contractors try to negotiate it right at the end. And so we visited with the owners of the property, and have come to an agreement as far as the costs of the materials, which we feel is a reasonable cost for the materials. And we're asking to purchase this separately and have it available for the contractor for use.
I think that if we were to go out and have to buy that fill, we'd be looking at how much, Herb, did you say, for?
We estimated almost twice as much as we're paying here.
So this is half again, so it's
Yes.
definitely is a good deal for us, so.
And that would just be for the materials itself. This also allows them to move it with a scraper rather than truck it in, which would be an additional cost besides the probably $2 extra.
I see. Is there a motion then to allow the purchase of fill from Don Indries in Glacial Lakes Capital for fill?
So moved.
So moved by Alderwoman Walder. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alderman Giselbeck. Any further questions or discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Dave. Moving on to agenda item number 6 is the ordinance number 07-20, creating Title 23 Stormwater and providing for the prohibition of illicit discharges to the municipal separate storm sewer system. And Rick, you'll lead us through this with the second reading and then public input. Or second reading and then council action, excuse me.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the council. This is yet another step in our multi-year journey to compliance with the Stormwater Phase 2 requirements of the Clean Water Act, the Federal Clean Water Act dated 1972. Recall, we've been speaking, the final rules came into effect in 1999. We've been watching it since about that time. In 2003, March 10th, as a city organization, we submitted our notice of intent to comply with these requirements, and we submitted that to the state, which started our first 5-year monitoring program, or monitoring period. So if we do the math from March 10th, 2003, by March 10th, 2008, we do have some additional work items to get done. Recall that Stormwater Phase 2 for communities our size, that being 10,000, we serve a population of 10,000 to 100,000. The Stormwater Phase 2 is a program consisting of 6 minimum control measures that, when working all together, the expectation is we're going to have a positive impact on stormwater quality in the urban setting. Recall those 6 minimum control measures are education outreach, public participation, and involvement. Item number 3, which we're going to talk very specifically about tonight, is the illicit discharge detection and elimination program. Then we're going to have a construction site erosion control program. We are mandated as well to have a post-construction stormwater management program or control measure. And the control measure number 6, we need to look at ourselves and our operations and our own decision making as a city organization. How can we do things better or differently for the purposes of stormwater quality? We've discussed this very ordinance starting about the middle of June. We talked about, we had CH2M Hill, our consultants here, and we talked about this draft ordinance and our standard operating procedure for the detection and elimination of illicit discharges to our stormwater management system. We had the first reading July 2nd. At that time, it was felt that we needed to have a little bit further discussion, so it went back to the July 10th Public Works Committee, and here we are this evening for the second reading. Some of the discussion has led us toward, and I've never, some people in our state said, a lot of communities might be able to do this, won't cost a thing, don't worry about additional staff, it'll fit right in. And if you've got room in your staff, other communities are different, that might be. Part of the discussions that have occurred most recently is we need to enter into this thing, even though it's mandated, with our eyes wide open. We have mandatory programs for illicit discharge detection and elimination construction site erosion control, sediment erosion control, and this post-construction stormwater management. The regulatory requirements, and this is a regulatory arm, we, as a city, are bound and mandated by the Federal Clean Water Act to become a regulatory agency for the protection of urban stormwater quality. That's going to take effort at staff level. We have to do plan review, that is mandated. We have to do inspections, that is mandated. If we're seeing things that aren't in accordance with the plans that have been approved, or if there's an impact to stormwater quality as we see it, we are mandated and obligated to take enforcement action. So again, it won't come without effort, and again, that's in at least 3 of these programs that we're going to have to go regulatory. So that was one of the points that came out of our most recent discussions. Is it's not going to be easy. It is a step ahead for Watertown. Getting to the illicit discharge program, we have included that in your agenda packets July 2nd and July 16th. Again, you'll find it in your agenda packet again this week. What is an illicit discharge? That is defined. You know, you've probably recognized that there's about 3 pages of definitions. Not all of them apply to illicit discharge elimination or detection and elimination. I'm setting the scene here because we're going to use a lot of these definitions. Eventually, we're going to use all of them, either in our erosion and sediment control program or in the post-construction stormwater quality and management programs. So this sets the scene and gets ourselves set up with definitions so we can work with the right terminology and become familiar with that. I guess one of the big things is what this ordinance is going to do is going to prohibit. Right. So far, our ordinances were a little bit weak. It mentions the environment just a little bit, and you shouldn't discharge sediment into the curbs and gutters and into the Big Sioux River and Lake Compesca. Not really much of a hammer out there. This ordinance, Chapter 23, which is our brand new chapter or title in our ordinances, is very specific as to, prohibition of illicit discharges is very specific. If it's not rainwater, it doesn't belong in our storm sewers, in our creeks, in our rivers, in our lakes. There are a few exceptions, and I think those are, maybe I should back up. What are some examples of illicit discharges? That's been included, but for the public's benefit, if there's a cross connection, and it does happen by accident, and this is something that we're going to try to do through inspections, try to reduce anyway, through inspections and plan review, every once in a while you get a sanitary sewer hooked to a storm sewer. Oops. One thing this ordinance says is, yes, it happens, and it has happened in the past, and you know what, maybe it's even permitted in the past, but if we find it and we know about it, it's gone. It has to be eliminated. So that's going to be something that is noteworthy, I believe. If we have, in Watertown, septic tanks are not a big issue because we don't have that many, but again, if we find one that's surfacing or discharging to the storm sewer or any of our rivers, lakes, and streams, that is an illicit discharge and will need to be mitigated. Things such as commercial car wash wastewaters, radiator flushing wastewaters, engine degreasing, oil disposal, leaky underground tanks, the direct spraying of fertilizers and herbicides over application of those same substances to where if you use too much nitrogen and phosphorus on your lawns, you know what? That is an impact from a nutrient loading standpoint, and that is an illicit discharge. Is it going to be regulated? Yes. Is it going to be easy? No, probably not. It's going to take part of our education and for our community. Other discharges, dewatering at construction sites is an illicit discharge. It can be, it will be unless it's permitted through the state of South Dakota. And other chemical hazardous materials, garbage, general pollution in our community in general is considered an illicit discharge. So, I mean, Mr. Heller had made the point, we're talking about water quality. What about the pollution and the trash and the debris throughout our community? Yes, that's an illicit discharge. That has an impact on water quality, has an impact on flood control and the capabilities of our storm sewer system to function properly. So that is an issue. The exceptions that are also noteworthy that won't be necessarily prohibited by this ordinance, water line flushing. If we have to flush a line, keep our hydrants working, the Clean Water Act provides for that is not a prohibited discharge. That is not considered an illicit discharge. General landscaping irrigation, some spray, overspray. No, we're not going to be going out to people's doors and businesses' doors and say, hey, put different nozzles on because that's an illicit discharge into the storm sewer. No, we're not going to do that. Groundwater infiltration to storm drains, pumped groundwater, footing drains, sump pumps, those types of things. That is not considered an illicit discharge. One of the things that we did include as item that was not prohibited, and we wanted to talk about that, is individual residential washing of vehicles. We think that should be, not be included. It is in the version in your agenda packet. We would like to see individual residential washing of vehicles removed from that list of discharges that are not prohibited, and really set up ourselves for the ability to have the enforcement authority in the most egregious of offenses. That being, if I got a dusty vehicle and I'm washing my own vehicle, is that an egregious offense? No. But if I go through, if I'm hunting and it's a wet fall and the things are packed in and I've got chunks of mud and blood coming off of my vehicle into the storm curb and gutter, into storm drains, into rivers, lakes, and streams, yeah, that's an egregious offense, and you know what? We ought to deal with that. So that's what we suggest, is that we make that minor revision. There's going to be issues. There's going to be discharges, for example, in a construction site. Groundwater dewatering. If you're going to put in some of these storm sewers and sanitary sewers deep into the ground in Watertown, we're blessed with the resource of shallow aquifers here. That's where we get a lot of our drinking water. But we do have to dewater to construct in our community, and that is an issue that dewatering is a matter that is permitted by the South Dakota Department of Environment and Natural Resource, and therefore is not considered an illicit discharge. There may be other non-stormwater discharges that are permitted through the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System that are permitted by EPA and the DENR as well. Those discharges, if permitted, are not considered illicit discharges. Some of the things that we're going to be doing, again, it will come to how we are going to act as a community, as a staff. We're going to reduce, eliminate, and detect illicit connections and discharges into our storm sewer system through plan and construction review. We have the authority to go onto construction sites and if we even suspect, not even a construction site, any site, an illicit discharge or an illicit connection, this ordinance authorizes the city personnel to go out and investigate that. This requires remediation if there is an identification of an illegal discharge, all the way through notice of violations processes, through through the abatement process, whether that, if a person is identified as discharging an illicit or non-stormwater discharge to our storm sewer system, if that person is identified by the city, there's no doubt about who it is, and refuses to make a change, the city is empowered to make that change on behalf of that person. There is an appeal process that's set up here, and the Public Works Committee by this ordinance is set up to make an appeal, so everyone has their right to due process. The Public Works Committee then will be empowered to overturn a decision that is made at staff level with regard to the abatement of illicit discharges. It's also set up to where there's these cases can be prosecuted civilly. So with that, I've gone through the entire ordinance. Thank you for your patience while I did that, but it is pretty important. It's a big step for Watertown, and we certainly would, from a staff perspective, recommend your approval with the small change that I've noted, so we can move forward into compliance by March 10th, 2008.
Thank you, Rick. Well, we've had the second reading, and now we need to go to council action to discuss it further. Is there a motion?
I'll go ahead and make the motion that we pass the resolution.
Is there a second? That's a motion by Alderwoman York. Is there a second? Seconded by Alderman Garnis. Discussion.
Well, Rick, we've talked and re-talked and rehashed this at Public Works so many times, and I know it's Mr. Heller's favorite subject, but it's one of the things that, even though some of the things in there we might think are kind of outrageous and that we don't really agree with, it's something that we have to do anyway. I mean, it's mandated, it's going to happen in just a few months, so this is just the time to do it, and it's just going to be an education process all along the way.
It truly is.
And one thing that we've talked about is locally, we're kind of our own worst enemies. The contractors that come in that build buildings all over, be that McDonald's or Burger King's or Walgreens, they know just what to do. They put up their construction fencing right away. They know the things that they do in other areas of the country, and there's no reason why they shouldn't do them in Watertown, South Dakota. Locally is where we have to do our education process, I think. So I think it'll come. It'll just be with some growing pains like everything else.
And it's already coming, quite honestly. If you can imagine where we were 4 years ago before we started putting up billboards before we started putting in municipal utility, or flyers in the municipal utility bills, before our paper and our local media got on board and allowed us some airtime and some ad space. You know, we're starting to make a difference. I think you can see it in our community already.
Do we need a motion?
No, we've already have a motion and a second. We're into discussion and questions. Alderman Wilkins, do you have a
Well,
comment?
I'm asking, do we need a motion to remove the individual washing of vehicles at this point? You recommended that be removed from this ordinance. How would we handle that?
I'm assuming the motion was made to take into account the recommendation of my
okay.
of staff person, that Mr. Wilkins.
Okay, thank you.
I have
Yes.
one question. Will this be the code enforcement person kind of regulating this or checking out complaints or whatever?
Right now, that could be one of several people. We see illicit discharges crossing a lot of lines, including planning and zoning, to include the code enforcement officer and our building official and building inspector. So there's 3 people already. Mike Berger's crew at the wastewater collection plant with their TV camera equipment. They're vital. They're going to play a vital role in this, always have, quite honestly, and they'll continue to do that. So at least those 2 departments that I can think of, I guess, on my feet right now, and that number of people are already going to be involved in this.
It also could be me. I'm trained by the state in erosion and sediment control, so I can certainly go out on the site and show somebody where there are issues.
I think it's important we don't lose sight that the individual can appeal this decision. Is that correct, Rick?
Decisions that staff would make with regard
Right.
to a
They can
pending
appeal
and
to the-
alleged violation,
to the
yes.
Public
There is
Works
that right to
Committee.
due process in
Right.
this chapter, so yes.
Okay.
As we go along, if they feel that, staff is just wrong, they have a place to go to discuss that with their elected officials.
The point is we hope we don't have to get that far. We hope that through an education process and working with the various agencies that will be involved here, that a lot of these issues will be taken care of, and we'll never get to that point. That's why we've been educating for 4 years.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item number 7 is the proposed update to the capital improvement plan. Begin with council review and then public input. And Tracy?
Thank you. Now we'll move on to something really exciting here. I know you look forward to this every year, as do I. As the mayor mentioned, the purpose of reviewing the capital improvement plan tonight, or the proposed plan, is to allow the city council members an opportunity to provide input and discuss any part of the plan that you wish. No action is required by the council tonight, or will be asked by the council. However, you may choose to take action on specific items if you wish to change what the mayor has proposed, or make any sort of revision to the mayor's recommended plan. And then also, this is an opportunity for members of the public to come forward and speak in support of or in opposition to any of the elements within the capital improvement plan as it's been recommended by the mayor. Just a word about kind of what work has taken place that brings us to this point tonight. The process begins in mid-May when city department heads are requested to submit their capital improvement requests, and that term includes or covers as well equipment within their departments. And the department heads are asked to submit those requests that they have identified for the next 4 fiscal years, starting with 2008. And then late in June, or first part of July, the mayor and I have met with each of the department heads and reviewed those requests. And then, as you folks know, last week you received an electronic copy of the mayor's recommended CIP for review prior to tonight's meeting and the public input portion of this process. From this point forward, then, as I said, tonight we'll discuss any suggested changes or thoughts that the council members may have, and you certainly can consider any alternatives or changes that you see fit, as well as obtaining public comment on the proposed plan. The adoption and formal council action to approve the plan is scheduled for August 6th, which will be our next city council meeting. I will mention that if after tonight you any of the individual council members wish to propose amendments to the plan, it would certainly work better, I believe, if you contact me ahead of time so that those proposals can be distributed to council members for consideration before the August 6th council meeting. The plan itself is split into 5 planning periods, and the first 4 are, as I mentioned, the next 4 fiscal years, beginning with 2008. The 5th period, if you will, of our planning capital improvement plan includes everything beyond year 4. So we try to be much less specific or definitive for those outer years. It seems to have worked very well in the past. Year 1 of the plan is intended to become then the capital portion of our city budget for the coming year. Typically, in the past, that has rolled into the budget process very well and has required few, if any, changes. In other years, as we proceed through the budget process for the remainder of the summer, there are times when we've had to step back and revisit some of the capital items because the dollars just weren't there as it turned out as the rest of the budget came together. So I think this may be one of those years when, even though the plan may be approved on August 6th, before the budget process is finished, we may find that we simply don't have all of the necessary dollars to fund particularly those things that are associated with the funds coming out of the city's general fund. So I will just leave that caveat out there for you to keep in the back of your mind as we move forward through this process. And then, of course, next year at this time, we will update the plan again. And 2008, of course, will be dropped off the plan, and 2012 will then become year number 4 of the plan. In general, some of the financing philosophies or assumptions that are understood or should be understood as part of the proposed plan include some of these following items. One, we've over the years have tried to use what I call and what is commonly referred to as pay-as-you-go financing. In other words, we try to minimize the level of debt that we use to finance capital improvement projects for the city. And the debt is typically only utilized for projects that, if not for borrowing the money, would not happen. So many of the things you see in the plan, in fact, the first 4 years of the plan include no projects that are anticipated to require debt financing. So we're not anticipating any further debt for the next 4 years. Obviously, those circumstances can change depending on our revenue stream over the next several years. But as it's been recommended by the mayor, we're not anticipating utilizing debt financing for any of those projects. A further philosophy is for enterprise needs to be supported by the enterprise rates, and specifically I'm referring to the wastewater and solid waste departments. We have, over the years, set our sewer and solid waste rates at a level that will support the timely replacement of equipment and expansion of the landfill and construction or replacement of sewer lines and all those things that are associated with those enterprises, so that we don't have to utilize general tax dollars for those capital needs of the sewer and solid waste departments. Further assumptions, the plan as it is before you tonight assumes that there will be no need for further reductions of the general fund budget for 2008. Again, that is an assumption at this point. We will pin that down as the next 6 to 8 weeks roll by. Of course, an assumption in this plan is that the cost estimates are accurate, and as we all know, that is not always the case, but for planning purposes, we certainly have to assume that we're making relatively accurate estimates of future costs. One important feature of the plan, and we'll get to this a little bit later, but the plan is heavily dependent upon what we refer to as our second penny sales tax. All of the revenue generated from that second 1% sales tax goes into our capital improvement fund and is utilized for capital projects. And we're assuming at this point that those sales tax revenues over the next 4-year period will grow at an average of 2% per year. And historically, that has been quite a conservative mark of 2%, although, you know, that can certainly change in the future. Further, an assumption that the debt market will be available to us if and when we choose to borrow funds, and that state and federal and certain private donations, dollars, will be available as the plan contemplates. The plan that you received includes on page 1 an overall summary of the planned spending over the next 4 years, and it's broken down by function for each of the next 4 years. And you can see the general government, which would include things such as the mayor's office, finance, city attorney, engineering, city hall, those things that are just part of the general government function of the city. The second category is public safety. Public works really takes up the lion's share of the plan over the 4 years. In fact, about 70% of the dollars over the 4 years are expected to be used on public works associated costs, either projects or equipment replacement. And then smaller portions are utilized or anticipated for health and welfare, for culture and recreational facilities, and conservation and development needs. The total estimated cost of all of the items in the plan for the next 4 years comes to about $34.6 million. A year ago, the 4-year plan came to a little over $51 million, so the total for the 4 years is down considerably, almost $17 million. And that's really the result of 2 very large projects that we're undertaking this year. One, you just awarded the bid on earlier this evening. That's the First Avenue Extension project that will be implemented, or at least we'll begin implementing that this year. And the second large project that was in the 2007 year of the plan is the airport runway project out at the airport that's currently underway. So those 2 projects alone amounted to about $12 to $13 million, and so they have, because they're being implemented now, are no longer in the future plan, and so the overall total has dropped from about $51.4 to $34.6 million over the next 4 years. The mayor has asked that I go through this, the plan, page by page, and we can move fairly quickly through this, I believe, but I do want to at least give you an opportunity to look at each department and stop me if you have any particular questions as we go through this. For now, if you would just flip to page 2 in the plan, I just want to talk a little bit about the format and the layout of this, because it has changed fairly significantly from the format that we've used in past years. What we've tried to do this year is to put the plan for the 4-year period for each department all on one sheet, rather than having a separate section for each of the 4 years. So if you look at page 2, you can see that this relates strictly to the mayor's office, which would include the city council members. The proposed spending is listed, and there's one item in this case, the laptop computers, and you can see that the eventual replacement of the laptops that have been issued to you folks is planned for 2010. And then the funding source near the bottom, that will be funded by general fund revenues. And you'll see as we go through this that each department is laid out in the same fashion. The dollar amounts are inserted there in the year in which that expenditure is anticipated. So we're hoping that this format and this layout makes it a little bit easier to see the picture for each department kind of on its own. With that, we'll move on. The next page is the attorney's office. You can see that's a big ticket item there for the 4-year period. We'll try to keep Stanton in business with his computer. And again, I'll just flip through these fairly quickly, so please stop me if you have anything in particular that you'd like to stop and discuss. Finance Department is the next one, and again, all these come under the general heading of general government functions, and again, we're simply replacing or planning for the replacement of computers and office equipment in the Finance Department. Page 5 is the Information Technology Department, and as you folks know, we currently have a vacancy in the IT administrator. You'll see that we haven't scheduled anything for 2011. We've simply rolled forward the plan for 08, 09, and 2010 as it was contemplated a year ago. So there really haven't been any changes to that from a year ago. Next department is the City Hall / government buildings. We've got several items here, including, this is where we have planned for the city's contribution to the new National Guard Armory that's proposed or in the works, as well as improvements to City Hall and improvements to the Senior Citizen Center. Simply, these are some items that don't necessarily fit within any other city department. One thing I'll point out that all of those costs are expected not to come from general fund revenues, but rather from the capital improvement fund itself, which is funded with a separate dedicated sales tax.
Can we just shout out a question when I have one?
Please do.
The accessibility improvements, 281,000, that's the entire amount for 2008. Are we going to be doing everything that was recommended in the study that we had put before us just a few months ago?
There were several different alternatives proposed in that study, and the one that's being proposed here for 281,000 was the plan or the option that was recommended by the Finance Committee.
Great.
We can maybe take a stab at some specific questions about what's included there. I know Herb can help me out on that.
I probably don't have any right now, but I would just like to commend you for putting that in there. I'm sure the Mayor's Committee on Folks with Disabilities will be thrilled to see that. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on that before we move on? Engineer's office, primarily replacement of existing equipment. There's also this is where we budget for the year-to-year implementation of the GIS, or Geographical Information System. And that concludes the general government segment of the plan. Moving on then to public safety, on page 9 is the police department and E911 dispatch.
There we go.
And the department heads are here too. I mean, if there are specific questions you have on any of these things, I'm sure they'd be more than happy to jump up and answer them. Most of the items in the police department plan are funded with general fund dollars. There's a significant item for the mobile data terminal software expansion that we're contemplating funding with the grant. That grant application was approved several meetings ago by the council, and we're optimistic that that grant will be successful. The E911 equipment is all funded through the 75 cents per line phone surcharge that we all pay. Any questions on the police
I
department?
just have for my own information, I've got a question. Why do we use police cars and not SUVs? Is Joe here? Why do we use like a 4-door sedan for our police cars and not SUVs?
For the most part, that's a great question. You'll see the sheriff's department has a few of those, Carol, but for the amount of patrol that we put on the city, the wear and tear, the 4-wheel drive is really not conducive for patrol of the city streets and the amount of mileage. We average about 3,000 miles a car a month, and so they're not equipped for that type of wear and tear. Fine out on the road for the highway patrol, fine out on the road for the sheriff's department on the county streets, but not for us. However, we do roll into some problems sometimes, and you'll see in one of those years where we have a Suburban right now that somewhere in the vicinity of about $42,000, $44,000. What we've asked is to change gears and go to Durangos, which would allow us 2 4-wheel drives when we do have that inclement weather, so we can still get around town. But in answer to your question, it's not conducive for patrolling city streets.
I know there was a very good reason, but I didn't know what it was.
Okay.
Thanks.
You bet.
Incidentally, that item Joe mentioned to add 2 4x4 vehicles or replace one Suburban with 2 4x4 vehicles is in the 2009 year.
One question, Tracy, on the E911. We supplement their budget to about 130,000. Is that in here? I know we approved a raise in the rates from the other counties.
I anticipate that the E911 fund will require some supplemental funding from the city for 2008. I believe it's, right now I'm projecting about 115,000. I think this year, because there was an anticipated spike in needs for some capital equipment, we had anticipated 135,000 for 2007. That should drop back to 115 then next year. But I think long-term, that's certainly an area that is somewhat soft in terms of the funding that is available for E911. We've talked about that at Finance. We've taken some steps to increase the amount of revenue that's generated through our contractual services with the surrounding counties. I think we need to continue to pursue that. You've been at some of those meetings, Dennis, when we've talked about that, and I think we'll take one step this year, and I think we'll need to take further steps in providing those services and at what would be, in my opinion, a fairer price in the future than what we're getting for our services today. And on a kind of a side note, there are efforts underway to, at the state level, to increase that 75% or 75 cent per line surcharge that does go to fund E911. And that's certainly, I think, very easy to justify, not only in Watertown, but any other city around the state that operates a public safety answering point like our 911 center. That surcharge just does not generate enough money to support that level of service. The technology and the equipment and the software, everything has become much more expensive. The level of service that's demanded and frankly, the level of service that the technology is capable of providing is just increased exponentially over the years, and frankly, the public demands it. If one county has a level of service to locate cell phone callers that call into E911, people start asking, why don't we have that here? And that's certainly a reasonable expectation, but it does come with a fairly high price tag. Anything else on the police department? Fire department is on page 10. You can see there's a combination of funding sources depending on the item. Some are general fund supported, some are capital improvement funds, and some as well are grants. Page 11 is the Planning and Zoning Department. And that really concludes the public safety segment of the plan. And then where the real meat and potatoes are in the public works function, we start out with the public works director. We do budget funds each year within this portion of the plan for capital improvements in industrial parks or for economic development purposes. So if a segment of street or sewer line is needed to serve a new economic prospect, a new business that's expanding or moving to town, this gives us some degree of flexibility in meeting those needs as well. Street department is on page 14. That's primarily replacement, scheduled replacement of equipment that's used for cleaning and maintaining the streets. Street system improvements, this is a section that identifies those actual streets that are, or street projects that are anticipated. You can see we don't have any street projects as such for 2008. In addition to the specific projects, we also plan for the annual programs of milling and overlaying streets throughout town. There are additional funds put in this year for sidewalk, curb, and gutter in anticipation of the kind of ramped up costs, no pun intended, to improve our handicap ramps on the streets that we are improving. You can see the 10th Avenue North project is on the plan here in 2011. I think we'll be talking about that a little bit later this evening as well. You can see there's a significant amount of state and federal grant funds or state and federal dollars that are associated with the street projects. Storm sewer and flood control is the next section. And again, we have some annual programs that are anticipated here, as well as specific storm sewer projects. This section of the plan has really changed considerably from a year ago, and that was mainly due to the study that was the storm sewer system study that was just recently completed, and so the priorities have shifted some. And you can see that, in essence, we're looking at one significant storm sewer project each year for the next 4 years.
I might mention on the storm sewer side, the impact of all the additional rain and runoff that we had this spring certainly weighed into some of the decisions we made in addition to the Austin study.
Anything on that before we move on? You can see that all of those storm sewer projects are funded with, again, capital improvement dollars or capital improvement sales tax dollars. The next several pages, the next page is the sanitary sewer collection system improvements, and those are projects that are funded out of our sewer fund and paid for with sewer rates that our sewer customers pay. Lift station improvements and sewer line improvements. There are no improvement projects planned for the treatment plant itself in the next few years. The next several pages looks like 18, 19, and 20 all are involving the wastewater department, the maintenance and collection division, treatment plant division, the industrial pretreatment, and the laboratory. And you can see it's pretty much vehicles and equipment, some computers, in some cases, very expensive equipment. If there are no questions on the sewer department, I'll keep going. Solid waste department also is a couple pages long, and there again, it's primarily equipment replacements. There again, the landfill in particular requires some very expensive equipment to operate. We are anticipating that in 2010 that the cell number 4 will be constructed, designed in 2009 and constructed in 2010. Any questions on the solid waste department? Page 23 is a cemetery. Again, that's for the most part equipment replacement.
The mausoleum project's actually going to happen in 2008.
Well, that would be phase 2. We're currently, phase 1 is currently underway and in progress, as you will recall, awarding the bid. And this would be the estimate for the interior improvements. So once the exterior roofing improvements and exterior stone improvements are completed, then we would plan to do the second phase in 2008. Page 24 is the airport. You can see there's a lot of state and federal money for the those items that have the tag AIP or Airport Improvement Program associated with them. The current plan or program provides 95% federal funding, 2% state funding, and the city pays 3% of those AIP projects. And that's the public works segment of the plan. Health and welfare is really very limited. We've got our mosquito control program. You can see anticipating replacing some equipment in 2009, and animal control. Those are really the only two departments or operations that we have that fall under the category of health and welfare. Beginning on page 29 then is the culture and recreational departments, Parks, Recreation, and Forestry. And that department, of course, is split into divisions for each of their facilities: supervision, recreational programs, golf course, aquatic center on page 30. Page 31, the Cook Complex and auditorium. 32, we're in the Bramble Park Zoo and the ice arena. Page 33, the park system.
Are we gonna have a dog park development?
There's an item in the plan for 2008 to develop a dog park, yes.
Good.
I know the question will come up, now that you've said that, where are you thinking, has there been a location discussed?
I don't know how firm the location is at this point. One of the thoughts is to put it up in, be just up where the city gardens are, just north of 10th Avenue, in that vicinity.
I don't think it's firm.
You mean where the gardens are, not in place of the gardens?
No, just in that vicinity.
No. Roger talked about putting it's west of the gardens where where the storm thing is through there. But I don't think Rick's gonna let us do that because that would be putting doggy doo-doo in the storm sewer, so.
Come on, Rick.
City park and campground? And the last item under the Park and Rec Fund is the city park and campground on page 33, and then page 34 is the forestry department, which is actually a general fund department. The large amount in 2008, the amount of $425,400 contemplates a federal grant that will assist for further expansion of the trail. We've received the city's been extremely successful in receiving grant funding for the trail system. We currently have two grants that will assist in the trail by the lake. There's a $500,000 grant for that, and then a $402,000 grant, I believe it is, that will assist as part of the trail that will be east of 19th Street East, that will go from 14th Avenue North down to the new First Avenue extension, and then out to the Redland Arts Center. So we've got almost $1 million in grant funds that will be included there. In the future years, there's the $175,000 per year. That is what the city has been providing for the trail system for at least a number of years now. Did I answer your question, Gordon?
Yes, but in consideration of our two new city council members, would it be possible for Raj perhaps could give us an update on the bicycle path and where we've been and where we're going, et cetera? And maybe not tonight necessarily, if you don't want to. I mean, if you're prepared, you certainly can. But if you, at least by the next meeting, if we could have that as an agenda item. What's your wish, Raj?
Makes no difference to me. I can give you an update tonight or at a next meeting.
Why don't you give us an update, Roger, and just take us 10 minutes or 5 minutes?
They're getting tired of listening to me, Roger, so you can.
Yeah.
Well, like Tracy mentioned, two major projects, and they're both are going to probably be constructed in 2008. We have a $663,000 project on North Lake Drive that would begin at Cutts Avenue and work itself, southwesterly toward Memorial Park. That project, Austin Engineering has completed the survey phase and they're in the preliminary design phase. That has a DOT Federal Highway grant of about $500,000, and then the trail east. And I do have some aerial photos of where that trail that Tracy described is running from 14th Avenue North along, east of 19th Street all the way down to First Avenue extension and then out to the Redland Center. I'll pass that around so you can visualize where that trail will be.
What's the approximate estimated cost per mile for that trail?
Well, it's changed dramatically as crude oil and asphalt prices have gone up. We've gotten it for as little as $22, and we're seeing it up in the $30 to $40, per lineal foot on a 10-foot wide trail, 3 inches thick. So every project that we bid, reflects current pricing. And our hope with the next bid is that we combine both the North Lake Drive trail with that east side trail, in which we'd be talking nearly $1 million worth of improvements, and hopefully see the price per lineal foot be more realistic. So those are the two big trail projects. If you recall, there was a master trail plan done a number of years ago. Both these projects were a part of that master trail plan. Of course, the lake, the long-range goal is to eventually get all the way around the lake. We work a section on the north side, and then we jump down to the south side, and hopefully we'll meet over on the west side. But it is it's a long-range project, because we're about 15 miles around there, and at $100,000 a mile, it's a lot of money. So again, at $175,000 a year local funds, we don't get a lot of miles, but with the ability to secure some of these federal funds in the last couple of years, that $1 million will take us a lot further than our $175 a year has taken us in the past. Any questions?
Yeah, I got one question, Roger. On crossing 212, what's your plans there?
On the east side trail, that would cross at the stoplight at the Walmart corner, 29th, I believe it's 29th Street and 212.
Dangerous corner.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the new bridge that's a part of the First Avenue North extension over Willow Creek, that has a designated 9-foot wide trail separated from the roadway with concrete and rail, so we'll have a safe crossing across that new bridge that's a part of the project that you let bids on tonight.
Okay, thank you, Roger. Anything else, Gordy?
Yeah, since I got you into Raj, thanks.
Okay. Tracy?
One thing I'll point out on some of the, particularly in the Park and Rec Department, some of the projects also include donation funding. Where you see the DON/CAP, that indicates it's a combination of donations and city capital improvement funds. On page 35 then is the Community Rec Center. You can see they're primarily just replacing their fitness equipment and then making some minor, relatively minor improvements to their facility. Library, of course, we've just at the tail end of a major library renovation project, so there aren't a lot of items there. They do fund all of their computer replacements through their fines fund, so that does not, the computers in the library that both the public and the staff use are funded strictly through the fines and not through tax dollars. That's all of the cultural and recreational portion of the plan, and the only piece left is the conservation and development. The proposed Freshwater Institute Education Center at the Bramble Park Zoo Discovery Center as an addition to that. And page 39 is, we're back to the down to the bottom line there, the grand total. So you can see for the 4 years is about $34.6 million. The next several pages then, starting on page 4, is that fifth period of our plan, which includes year 2012 and beyond. Some of the departments utilize this portion of the plan to just carry their equipment replacement schedules forward, as well as some more futuristic kind of projects. You'll see in here and for some of these larger ones, you don't see any dollars associated necessarily because the project hasn't been developed to that point. But for example, a public safety / city administration building, a sporting multi-use facility. You'll see at east and west fire stations, some of those more futuristic at this point, but good things for you folks to have on your radar screen. There's Upper Big Sioux River Flood Control Project someday. And that section of the plan takes you through page 43. Then the very last section of the plan is really the where does it, how do we pay for it portion of the plan. And this is summarized again by funding source. You can see that the general fund, and I'm looking at page 44, general fund revenues are anticipated to provide about $3.2 million out of that $34 million total. That's about 9% of the overall plan. Park and Rec fund revenues will provide about 2%. The bulk of the funding will come from our capital improvement fund sales tax dollars. And on page 45, you'll see that over the 4 years, we're going to anticipate spending utilizing about $18.7 million of our second penny sales tax to fund projects. It's a little over half of the total plan. You can see sewer fund revenues will provide 10% and fund all the costs associated with capital improvements for the sewer department, and solid waste will cover their costs at about $3.2 million. State and federal grant funds are expected to provide about $4.2 million, or 12%. We're expecting outside contributions from other organizations in the form of donations of some sort of just about $1 million. And you see on page 46 that the total funding sources remarkably comes to the same amount as the total plan spending. So the very last page of the plan is an informational thing for council members. Indicates those changes that the mayor has made to the requests that the department heads have made. So you can, at your leisure, review those and see what has changed from what was originally requested by the departments. That really concludes, mercifully, everything that I need to go through
Okay.
tonight.
Is there any public input that would like to comment on the capital improvement budget? Anyone in the audience that like any comments? I guess not, Tracy. And then let's see, August the 6th, there'll be the approval of the council for any changes or then to adoption. So if not, then we'll move on to agenda item number 8, number A, consideration of contracts. Truancy Officer Services Agreement with the Watertown School District, Stanton, or Chief VTech.
Either or.
Okay.
Good evening, once again. This is a contract that our city attorney drafts up for us every year. It's something that we've been doing on a regular basis in partnership with the school program, and it is something that will come before you again next year about this same time. Stanton, other than that?
As you folks recall from previous discussions, statutorily, the school district is required on an annual basis to appoint a truancy officer or officers, and that they've contacted us. It's probably about 4 years ago when we first actually formally entered into this agreement. They contacted us. The agreement was drafted. It's principally in its same form as it has been for the last 4 years, with just the school year date changing. The services are provided at no cost to the school district. The police department just provides that service voluntarily, but they're required to appoint one, and the police department's graciously agreed to be the appointee.
Is there a motion then for the approval of the Truancy Officer Services Agreement with the Watertown School District?
So moved.
So moved by Alderman Giselbeck, seconded by Alderwoman Walder. Any questions or discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 8B, funding agreement with the South Dakota Department of Transportation for the 14th Avenue North / 1st Avenue North / Redland Arts Center Recreational Trail Project. And Roger?
This is the grant that was announced back in April of last year through Senator Thune's office that provided $400,000 for this section of trail improvement. It is in the 2008 State Transportation Enhancement Plan, and they are now at a point where they've issued an agreement, and so we'd like your approval for the mayor to sign that agreement and proceed with the engineering.
Is there a motion to that effect, please? So moved by Alderman Solberg. Is there a second?
Second?
Seconded by Alderwoman York. Any questions or discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 8C, financial assistance agreement with the South Dakota Department of Transportation for the airport fencing project. I believe there's 2 contracts, Tracy?
That's correct. There, and I alluded to this earlier, that on these AIP projects, there's a federal participation as well as state DOT participation, and we have both those contracts now and would like council approval for the mayor to sign both of those agreements.
Is there a motion to that effect? So moved by Alderman Garnos. Is there a second? Seconded by Alderman Meisenheimer. Any further questions or discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Agenda item number 9 is the approval to write off uncollectible ambulance accounts receivable in the amount of $9,447.34. Is there a motion for that? So moved by Alderman Solberg. Is there a second?
I'll second, but I would request that get an ambulance, it's easier to ride. People are complaining that it's the roughest ride they've ever had going through Falls.
Seconded by Alderman Giselbeck. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Agenda item number 10 is the authorization to advertise for bids for the purchase of the street department equipment. Actually, we're beginning with 2 new dump trucks with boxes and 1 new tandem dump truck with box. These are budgeted items. They're on a rotation replacement. Is that correct, Tracy? Can we have to do each one individually or just do them together? Is there a motion then to approve those 2 items?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Alderwoman Arbogast. Is there a second? Seconded by Alderwoman Walder. Any questions or discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 11 is a request from the Library Department to issue payment to Kristen Herkus for services performed in the amount of $1,200. Mike?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Basically, what Kristen has done for us is a beautiful mural in the children's area. She actually started on this back in May, late May, buying her materials and making some of the things before she got here. And then she spent a couple weeks here towards the latter part of last month putting it together. And I'd just like to get her paid instead of making her wait until the middle, late end of next month.
She's a young woman that needs her money now.
Well, I think that young artists need to be encouraged.
That's correct. Is there a motion to allow this payout early for Kristen Herkus? So moved by Alderman Solberg. Is there a second? Seconded by Alderwoman Arbogast. Any questions or discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Mayor, may
Opposed? Motion carried. Yes, Mike.
May I just stick in one thing?
Yes.
I know that Rick Schlechter was up here quite a little bit this evening, but I don't know if you know that today's his birthday.
You.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Rick.
The Mormon Tabernacle Choir, you
Agenda item number 12 is consideration of applications for the abatement or refund of taxes associated with the elderly or disabled assessment freeze. Tracy?
These are applications that have come from the county with the recommendation of the Director of Equalization for approval. As the agenda indicates, they all relate to the application for the elderly or disabled assessment freeze.
Is there a motion then for the approval of these applications for abatement of taxes?
So moved.
So moved by Alderwoman York. Is there a second? Seconded by Alderwoman Walder. Any questions or discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next, I'll refer to your handout on the open. We'll have 3 items. Number 1 being consideration of resolution number 07-40 regarding the planned 10th Avenue North Urban System Street Project. Dave Peterson.
Yes, you have a resolution before you to, basically this would do two things. One thing would be to change the funding type through the DOT from their funding using federal funds to using all state funds. What that allows for the city is that the city can do this a lot easier, and we don't have to follow all of the federal guidelines as far as widths of lanes and so forth that would require us to build a wider street than we probably would want to build through that particular area. The second portion of it delays the construction from the year 2010 to the year 2011. This would allow a few more funds to be available for the construction of this with the increases in costs of construction that have taken place over the last couple of years. We feel that the additional year would be needed to cover the costs for construction at that time.
Thank you, Dave.
This also comes with the recommendation of the Public Works Committee for approval.
Thank you, Herb. Is there a motion then for the approval of the resolution number 07-40? So moved by Alderman Heller, seconded by Alderman Giselbeck. Any questions or discussion?
Just
Not
going
all-
to say that this is a great thing that we don't have to, we can have that 10th Avenue improved without losing all those wonderful trees along 10th Avenue and keep the Ward B guys' phone from ringing.
Thank you. Okay, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Dave. Item number 2 on the open is the authorization for the police department to apply for a federal equipment grant from the National Officer of Drug Control. Chief Vitek.
Yes, sir. We're just asking for permission to apply for a piece of equipment, an automated video surveillance system under that grant, 0 funds from the city.
How much is the grant for, Chief?
We don't have a dollar amount, but that equipment's valued in the area of about $7,000.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion then for the authorization of the police department to apply for the federal equipment grant? So moved by Alderman Solberg. Is there a second? Seconded by Alderwoman Arbogast. Any questions or discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Chief Vitek. Tracy, item number 3 was the lien. Were you wanting to discuss that against
Yes.
the proceeds of the pool project?
Thank you, Mayor. This is just an informational item for the council. We have received in my office a lien filed on the proceeds of the remaining contract for the Aquatic Center project, for one of those contracts. There is an ongoing disagreement between one of the general contractors and one of his subcontractors, Clean Plumbing and Heating, Clean Plumbing and Heating has filed the lien on the proceeds of the contract that is owed to Karstensen Contracting. And under state law, they are required to file that lien in my office, and I'm required by state law to report that to you. The amount of the lien is about just under $10,000, plus finance charges, which amount to about $1,600. The balance currently on the contract owed Karstensen by the city is about $10,000. So somewhere along the line, those two folks, two businesses will have to get together and sort that out and figure just who's going to be entitled to how much. In the meantime, as long as that lien is valid, the city will not be making any further payments to Karstensen.
No.
Dennis, did you hear all that?
Thank you. Tracy, there's no action required by the council, is there?
That's correct.
Okay. Anything else to come before the open? If not, then we'll move under old business,
Well, I think this would probably be under old business.
our new business.
Are you, under the old business, we should probably continue on with our project of going through the home rule charter. The first step would be appointing a committee. And I think Mr. Wilkins had an idea that I kind of overlapped with, but I should let him present that because he was first to send it on to us, so I'll let him speak.
Well, I want to compliment the council for moving forward for the open government program that they're going to be considering in the next few months. My suggestion was to form a committee of 20 people from the community, 2 from each alderman and alderwoman, and then 1 selected by the mayor. And they would meet and come with a recommendation in about 4 months. And I'm not anticipating that a council member would be a part of that committee. I think we'll have our chance to discuss that at, when they make the recommendation. And this way we would involve more people. I think the more people we involve, the better decision we'll have.
I do think we can have some discussion maybe on the number. I think 2 is okay. Maybe the number could be different if people from the council think that should be a different number. 2 from each board, from each council person sounds fair. But I do think we need some council representation on that committee. If not, for nothing else, for point of reference, as a resource, a whole lot of different things. I think that that committee would probably like to have at least 1 or 2 council people. Go ahead and discuss.
My thought on that was that they would probably call members of the council to come meet before them. And so you would be involved indirectly.
That makes sense. Yep. Alderman Garnos, you have a comment?
None other than backing up Russ's request. That'd be 21 committee members, and to enlarge it beyond that, I think gets to be unwieldy. And if each councilman and woman appoints 2, they should get a very good cross section of the community. My thought.
Carol, do you have any comments? No? Giselbeck?
I'm sorry, not at this point.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Heller, do you have any questions or comments? George? No? No? Okay, anybody else wants to comment?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
Is this going to be an open committee or a closed committee where residents that might be concerned but don't get put on the committee that could come to the discussion of it? Same way with aldermen and women that may have an interest in it, that we'll be the ones voting on it. There'll be a presentation. I sometimes like to go to some of the committee meetings to learn more of the discussion that items come up with within the council, but you don't get the full history of the meeting and everything. And I would just like to see it as open as possible for anybody that's interested in going but may not have a vote or that way.
Well, I was thinking that it would be open to anybody that wanted to come. The more that we involve, they may not be able to speak at certain times, but they should be welcome to come and follow that progress. I even went as far as to think that if we know how people feel on certain issues, it might be well to have one that favors and one that doesn't favor. And maybe if that couldn't be determined, maybe 2 neutral people. I think it's important that we get all the facts out at this particular time rather than wait and try to deal with those facts if the item should get on the ballot.
I'm a little bit lost when you say one that favors and one that doesn't. One that favors what and one that favors what? Doesn't.
Whatever.
Stanton, how do you see this, Stanton?
Thank you, Mayor. I think I'm grateful that you folks are having the conversation. If you recall last meeting, I had suggested drafting a vaguely worded ordinance with blanks that you could fill in. I'm happy to hear you filling in some of them for me. A meeting in Hill City last week prevented me from preparing a draft for you to consider tonight. My expectation is we can distribute it through committees, but I understood the direction is that the charter commission that's going to be created by ordinance is going to be comprised of 21 members, and we'll talk about the appointment process, and I'll spell that out in the ordinance, to provide a report to the council. I'll for the purpose of the draft, say within 4 months from the date of the commission of the creation of the review commission. I do think the other thing the council might want to consider with that many people and them having to get together, I would imagine on a fairly regular basis, that committee is likely going to incur some expense, be it photocopying or whatever, that you give consideration to how you might reimburse people who serve for their costs of participation.
They might want to hire a recorder too. That might be possible.
Just point of order here, Russ, was that a motion that you're making regarding the 21 members?
Are we ready for a motion?
We're not ready right now.
Okay, more discussion then. Okay, I guess,
I agree with having this committee just as open as it possibly can be, and I'm sure our friends from the press agree with that too. Even beyond open, I think those should be advertised meetings. So if they're discussing a particular point on a particular night, whoever's interested in that can certainly come in, at least sit in and listen, have some input, so.
thank you. Stan, what would you be doing then?
I'll prepare an ordinance creating a charter review commission, and I'll try to spell out the things that I've heard tonight, and I'll make it available to you folks just as soon as possible, hopefully through the committee process.
I would add that if 4 months isn't enough time, then they have the right to extend that a short period of time. I'm not locked into 4 months.
I think our goal has always been before the next 2-year cycle election. So that well before people are going to file petitions, if one of the things that committee brings out is something about the change in our government, that anybody that's considering running for a position would know well in advance what they're running for. So that would be the long-term goal that I can see before the next 2-year election, which would be June of 2009.
And one thing that I didn't mention that I'm just thinking about, that the council, I'm assuming, will set the direction for that committee to go with specific plans in mind.
I would certainly hope there'd be some direction given to them.
If I could, and I think I made this point last meeting, the way our charter is written is that you could establish a committee for the purpose of simply reviewing it from top to bottom and making recommendations for proposed changes. If you have a particular agenda in mind, like you want to change this particular provision or portion of the charter, then the ordinance needs to spell that out, and the charter and state law requires you to hold an election on that very question. So the end game might be best to simply have the Charter Review Commission review the entire charter top to bottom, because if you expressly state a purpose of this commission to come back with a recommendation, they will be required to hold a special election on that point.
I think you've said it exactly right. I think we just need, their assignment would be just to look this through top to bottom. We've kind of singled out the one item of what kind of government we have, or, council, mayor, whatever. But that's not the only thing in there. There's a whole lot of things that those folks can go through and just make sure that we're maximizing ourselves.
Some of the mechanics of the thing, Russ, come to mind. Who appoints the chairman of this commission? How is the voting handled? You have to have 11 or 12 people there at each meeting in order to make take any action. All kinds of that the mechanical stuff that if you don't have it in there, you're going to have it's not going to work.
I think they can make some of those decisions, but that can be in the direction that the council gives to that group. And they could regulate some of those things. But I would think they could elect their own chairman, and they could set up some rules and regulations their first meeting, and they would have to go through that process and come with something that they can all live with. And they're all going to have to live with the end result anyway. They better learn right in the beginning.
As long as they use Robert's Rules of Orders.
I was just going to say, they just need to follow Robert's Rules of Orders. They don't have to restructure any bylaws or anything. They're not an ongoing committee. They're serving.
Mooney, you're going to have a news person about those meetings, won't you? Okay. I know. Stan, where would you like us to go from here now as far as you got some direction?
Yeah, I presume the direction is to direct me to prepare a draft ordinance for you folks to consider that's going to establish a charter review committee, and I'll try to spell out the direction that you've given me with regard to number and appointment, and there'll be some changes you folks obviously can still make.
Do you want a motion on that?
So moved.
Apparently.
Okay, motion by Alderman Garnos. Is there a second? Seconded by Alderman Wilkins. Any further questions or discussion?
What is the motion? I'm not sure I understand.
Stanton?
I guess it's a motion to direct the city attorney to prepare an ordinance establishing a charter review committee.
I believe that's correct. Okay, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Just one more thing, Mayor.
Yes.
If there's people in the community that have an interest in serving on that committee, they'd be wise to get a hold of their council person.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item number 14 is old business. Is there any old business to come before the council? If not, we'll move to new business. Any new business? Any liaison member reports? There will be no executive session. I guess just for everyone knows, tomorrow morning, Mrs. Turback Berry and myself and Mr. Redlinger from the chamber will be flying to Washington, D.C. To meet on the city's behalf in the morning, Wednesday morning around 9 o'clock. In regards to our essential air service, we're going there to plead our case to request three flights. And this was a recommendation made by our Sixel Marketing that we would probably be successful, or hope that it would be in our best interest to make a face-to-face appearance. So this is what we are planning on doing. We'll be back flying into Watertown Wednesday night around 10:30. So in the meantime, Council President Alderman Garnos is in charge of the city. Okay. And with that, may I have a motion to adjourn? So moved by Alderwoman Walder, seconded by Alderman Giselbeck. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.